This is the notes from the interview with Kevin Green on Friday, September 6th at 1:30 by Denise Sanford. Can you describe your past work experience? I'm from a good work ethic. I have good attendance. Whatever it takes to get the job done, I will stay and get it done. And then I asked him, well, what type of work have you done? He's done office work, accounts payable, daily sales reports, figure out problems, and then solve them. He's done restaurant work, and he's worked and has done warehouse work, which is what he's at now. And he's been there for about 4 years, and he's been a picker and a packer, and he can drive a forklift and a cherry picker. Okay, that was the end of question 1. Question 2, are you currently working? Where and how long? Yes, at GSI Commerce Company. That's not the name he had on his application, but they've had a name change, so that's the name now. And he's been there for 1 year and 9 months. Do you have a current CDL Class A? How long, and how did you come by it, and do you have much need for it? No, he does not have a Class A CDL. And let's see, would you be available for overtime work or weekends? Yes. What schools have you attended, and did you graduate? I went to, or do you have any other special schooling? No. He went to Aaron's Vocational High School, and he has a certificate for auto body repair. What did you do in your last job? What were your major responsibilities? Okay, rephrase that question. What do you do in your present job? What are your major responsibilities? I do ship alone. That's shipped out separate heavier parts to the customers to make sure that there's a good amount that gets shipped each day. What do you like best in those responsibilities? The challenge. What do you like least? Being short-handed. It's hard to do your job when others aren't there. Let's see. Why do you want to leave your present job? I feel like I can do something else. I want to go higher, get better pay. I want something with a little bit more challenge. Describe for me the best supervisor you've ever had. He cares about you 100. Let me rephrase this. He cares about you, not 100% about the job. He cares about you as a person and how you work and what you can do for each other. He's fair to everyone. What about the worst supervisor? He leaves when you call. Hold on. The worst supervisor, they leave when they want to. They do not care about the employees or whether the work gets done or about discipline. What do you feel is your strongest asset? My great work ethic. What would you like to improve? To be able to speak my mind a little more or to speak up if there's a problem. How would your last supervisor describe you as an employee? A great worker, great work ethic, and good attendance, always willing to go out and get the job done, dependable. What did you do in your last job to work towards teamwork? What I have learned on the job, I try to make sure it is right and to tell others and to encourage them along. Can you give me an example of a time when you had to go above and beyond the call of duty in order to get the job done? Stop doing something, stop working on something that's my normal thing to do to get something done that's either behind or something special for a customer to make sure it gets done. It's just an instinct. Can you tell me about some major obstacle you had to overcome in your last job and how did you handle it? I had to get a certain amount of work done to clear out the system, and if you don't, then you have to stay on overtime to get it done. It's the older orders that have to be, gotten out of the system. What kind of things bother you the most? Things I can't control or cannot fix. Also the attendance, trying to figure out how you're going to get the work done when there's no one there. And that was the end of the interview. I then told Mr. Green about the job over at the steel warehouse and explained the job to him. He is interested. He would like to go on for another interview. However, I'm not sure if he's After telling him about the job, he is interested, but he does seem hesitant. I don't really think it's what the type of work he's looking for, but he does seem like he would be a good candidate. But he looks like a person who's trying to improve himself. So, but he is worth pursuing a little further and seeing if he has any interest there. That's the end of Kevin Green. Thanks, Paula. Okay, Paula, this is the next one. Notes from interview with Dwayne, D-W-Y-A-N-N-E, McGill, M-C-G-I-L-L. Sorry, I got interrupted. Anyway, that was an interview with Dwayne, notes from interview with Dwayne McGill on Monday, September 9th at 8:30 a.m. By Denise Sanford. Question number 1, can you describe for me your past work experience? I've been in manufacturing and production for 25 years. Was at International Harvester on the assembly line. Prior to that, I was at Philip Morris, but I left Philip Morris for International Harvester. And now I'm at, I was at Edward Boat Valve, and I've done production, lathe, forklift, field service, basically did troubleshooting. Are you currently working? No. No, plant closure just happened at Edward Boat Valve, so he's just recently came out of a job. Do you have a current CDL? I'm in school for it now. I test next Monday for the permit. I'm just trying for the CDL-B instead of the A. Just want to cover all my bases. Do you know your way around the Louisville area? Yes. Next question. Would you be available for overtime work or weekends? Any hours available. I don't believe... hold on. I'm sorry. He said you wouldn't believe the hours that we worked before. Do you have any special schooling or training? I had some training in Lean, L-E-A-N, manufacturing, and TQM, which is Total Quality Management. I'm also currently attending school for my CDL. Tell me what your major responsibilities were in your last job. In the plant, I assembled, built, and tested valves. I was a valve assembler / tester, and I'm also a field service tech. Would you like best in those responsibilities? The inspection. I like the responsibility of troubleshooting and solving the problem. What did you like least? The overseas competition, which causes you to lose your job. Why did you leave your last job? There was a plant closure. Describe the best supervisor you've ever had. What made that person a good supervisor? If I had a problem, I could go to him and discuss the problem, and we could come up with a resolution together. And this was referring to when he had problems with parts that weren't did it right, and then they could go back to the people cutting the parts and make sure that they got that problem taken care of. What about the worst supervisor? I've not had any problems with supervisors. I respect supervisors. I respect the authority. What do you feel is your strongest asset? Being able to get along with others and learn skills quickly. What would you like to improve? I'd like to be more in control of the quality of the products produced. Now, and he admitted, he says, I'm not perfect by any means, but he would like that. How would your last supervisor describe you as an employee? I think he would say that I am an outstanding employee. He recommended me to be management. I probably, on hindsight, should have taken that, but I turned it down because I wanted to stay on the clock. What did you do in your last job to contribute towards teamwork? I helped implement the CEL program, which was taking everything that each individual needed and moved it so that everything was within a short distance from them. So it was everything was where you needed it to be. Can you give me an example of a time when you had to go above and beyond the call of duty in order to get the job done? The last week of the month was always a really busy time because we were always trying to get the orders out by that time before the end of the month. So the last week was always really busy, and I would always do 14 to 16 hours of overtime, and I would volunteer for it. I mean, I would work 14 to 16 hours, and I would volunteer for that because the last of the month was always a big push, and I just would always volunteer for that, to do that. Can you tell me about some major obstacle you had to overcome in your last job, and how did you handle it? Yes, there was a job that I had to go down to Texas for a field service tech job down in Texas, and it was with a valve that I was not familiar with, and I went to the engineer and discussed it with him, and basically took a crash course on this valve on how to do it, fix it, and he and I communicated back and forth, me from the site, to make sure everything worked out okay. What kind of things bother you? Security of a job, basically. The security of having a job. I feel that if you have good physical and mental health, I think everything else just falls in place. Just a note at the bottom, Paula, I really did like the overall attitude of this gentleman. He interviewed very well. Seems like a very nice man, willing to work hard, wants a job, willing to work for the job. And all of his jobs, he's been a long-term employee, which I think is a good sign. I've sent him directly over, he's going directly over to Bob Butcher, W-U-E-T-C-H-E-R, over at the Steel Warehouse to interview with him today at about 9:30. And now you can add to the bottom of that, Bob just called me back, and Bob was also very impressed with this gentleman, and thinks he's also a good candidate for the position. Thanks a lot. Bye. Okay, here's the next one. Notes from interview with Anthony Wren on Monday, September 9th at 10 a.m. by Denise Sanford. First question, can you describe your past work experience? I have been in steel companies doing shipping and receiving. I have warehouse experience, packing, machine operating, things of that nature, and inventory control. Are you currently working? No. Do you have a current CDL license? No. Would you be available for overtime work or weekends? Yes. Do you have any special schooling or training? I took a pre-nursing class. I can do first aid and things like that. Tell me what your major responsibilities in your last position were. I was the lead warehouse operator over 5 guys, lead machine operator with over 5 guys in his crew. Sorry about that, Paula. I was in charge of shipping and receiving. At one end of the line we had to keep loaded, and the other end we had to keep the stuff off and put up. What did you like best in those responsibilities? Hold on. The fact that it was a team environment and everyone was willing to help each other, it made for a better work environment. What did you like least? There was nothing I did not like. Why did you leave your last job? I was laid off. Describe for me the best supervisor you've ever had. You felt like that he took care. You felt like that he cared what you thought. I can't narrow it down. They've all been like that. If you ask them, they would ask you for their ideas, and they would, try to implement those ideas, and they made you feel like a member of, a contributing member to the team. What about the worst supervisor? He really couldn't think of any worst, so I asked him what did he think would make for a bad supervisor, and he said one who comes in and shows off that they think they have power being your supervisor. He said there's ways of asking someone to do something, and there's ways of telling someone to do something, and it's all in how you word it. What is your strongest asset? I'm a hard worker, willing to do any job, to do anything asked of me. Don't complain. We're here to do a job. What would you like to improve? My efforts to get done with the work and then being willing to help other people. I'll always try to finish my job, but if I do get finished, I like to try to help everyone else. How would your last supervisor describe you as an employee? He would say I'm a hard worker, always achieved my goals, was a team player and responsible. What did you do in your last job to contribute towards teamwork? I took up the slack wherever it was needed. I was always willing to help everybody. Can you give me an example of a time you had to go above and beyond the call of duty in order to get the job done? I came in early to work one of our 12-hour days because I knew that the work couldn't get done. The work that needed to go out the next day couldn't get done in the 12 hours, so I came in 2 hours early and stayed 2 hours late. Can you tell me about a major obstacle you had to overcome in your last job and how did you handle it? Sometimes the truck drivers would come in without their load number or their paperwork, and we wouldn't know what was their material, so we'd have to figure that out and see what they needed. So sometimes you'd have to call the supervisor, and he'd give you their number. The truck drivers always had a load number, but sometimes they'd forget that number or forget their paperwork, and you'd want to make sure you got the guy loaded right. What kind of things bother you the most? Nothing really. It's a job. There's always issues with a job, but it's a job and it has to be done, and you get on with it. He did seem to have the experience. Paula, this is just a note at the bottom. He does seem to have the experience. He's worked at Jeff Boat, and of course worked with steel and all up there, and he's worked at Boss Clark, and of course he, would have operated a crane for heavy equipment and steel and packaged steel for shipment and all there. And then he worked at Galv Pro, and again he's worked with steel coils for other steel products. So he is used to working with steel and does have the background and have done shipping and receiving. He was laid off at Jeff Boat. At Voss Cross, he did admit that he resigned because of family problems then. His father had a heart attack back during that period of time, and I guess he felt that he needed to be with his family and helping out there, and he didn't think it was fair to the company, so he did resign because he didn't think it was fair to them. Then after he was able to go back to work, he went to Floyd Memorial Hospital for a while as an orderly, and then he went to, when he got the job at Galv Pro, Galvpro, he left there, which he was just recently, he was laid off last year from there, so he's been looking for a job. I did go on because of his background. I did go on and send him over to Bob Butcher for an interview today at 11:15. I'm sorry, I rambled sort of there and left a lot of material at the bottom for you to type, Paula, but just get that down the best you can. Appreciate it. Thanks. Paula, if you can go back to your notes on Kevin Green, I think you might have been one of the first ones that you typed up, but he did meet, if you could just add to those notes that Kevin Green did have an interview with Bob Butcher on Tuesday, September 10th at 9 a.m. Bob called me after the interview, said that he did interview the gentleman. He seemed like a nice guy, but he said he didn't think that Mr. Green said he needed to decide if he was interested in the position, and he'd get back with Bob. So anyway, he needed to decide if he was interested in the job or not. So Bob thought it was not really the type of work he was used to, or maybe a little bit dirtier than what he was used to, and didn't seem that interested. So thank you. Okay, Paula, the next one is notes for interview with Trina Kimball on Monday, September 9th at 2:30 p.m. with Denise Sanford. First question, can you describe your past work experience? Before Marley, I worked a little warehouse hold it. I'm sorry. In a little warehouse as stock clerk, and before that I was a Shoney's waitress or hostess, whichever you want to call it. At Marley, I'm a machine operator. Shear cut material to various sizes. I can cut a 1/4-inch plate up to 20 gauge plate. Are you currently working? No. Do you have a current CDL, Class A CDL or B? No. Would you be available for overtime work or weekends? Yes. Do you have any special schooling or training that you'd like to mention? Not really. Currently going to JCC, working on her associates. She wants to get an accounting degree that she could use as a second income. What were your major responsibilities in your last job? Cutting material and making sure it was done right. There was no real quality control so each person was responsible for their own cutting the material and sending it to the next guy for punching. So you had to set the material up, move it from one location to the next, and log everything that you had done. What did you like best in those responsibilities? I liked being able to do the job independently. Why did you leave your last job? It was a plant closing. They moved the operation to another location, pulled everything out of Louisville. Describe for me the best supervisor you've ever had. The best was probably the meanest. I really learned a lot. He stretched my abilities. He pushed you to your limits until you made it or you didn't, and didn't make it, and a lot of people didn't make it. What about the worst supervisor? It was probably the same person for the same reason. She stated that now she seems to understand a little bit more than she did at the time, that some of this was a good thing, and like I said, she said that it pushed her to her limit and learned a lot from him. Paula, back up where I asked what the best of the responsibilities that she had liked, and I said being able to do the job independently. I forgot to mention the least. If you would add after that, what did she like least in those responsibilities? I cannot think of any least. Right now, she just really misses her job that she did have. Okay, you can continue now. What do you feel is your strongest asset? Her willingness to do a good job. She always wants to do a good job. What would you like to improve? I like education. I think that will be a lifelong goal of mine. We'll probably always go to school. How would your last supervisor describe you as an employee? I do not really think he cared. I guess he'd say as a hard worker. I do not think they really paid any attention to you as long as you did your job. What did you do in your last job to contribute towards teamwork? If we got a revision in on a product, you had to get everybody together, get together with everybody to go through the process on any changes or problems to make sure everybody got the word on the revision and make sure the product got out right. Can you give me an example of a time when you had to go above and beyond the call of duty in order to get the job done? Probably when I was in assembly, you had to sometimes stay over when something was not done right to make sure that it got done right correctly and got out. Can you tell me about some major obstacle you had to overcome in your last job and how did you handle it? I was a little afraid of heights when I started working CP lines, and some were really tall and up high, and there was no safety equipment, and it really wasn't safe. And it's different now. There is safety equipment now, but at that time there wasn't, and I just had to overcome it and do it. But it wasn't safe, but you just had to overcome it and go ahead and do it because I had to. What kind of things bother you the most? Safety and quality, things not being done right. And Paula, then I sent her she went directly over to Bob Butcher to meet with him, and I pointed out to her, as I have pointed out to all the applicants, the positions are hot, dirty, hard. It's not easy work, and I've been telling that to everybody. And she went over and met with Bob Witcher, and he said she wasn't deterred any from the job after she saw things over there. She says it's the type of environment she's used to working in, and he liked her as well. Thank you, Paula. Paula, if you would add on that her interview with Bob Witcher was on Monday, September 9th at approximately 3:45 p.m. Thank you. Okay, Paula, we're going to do this next one. Notes from interview with Michael Knight on Tuesday, September 10th at 8:30 a.m. Hold on, please. With Denise Sanford. Can you describe your past work experience? Yes, I've driven a truck. I've worked 2 or 3 years in warehouse yards, and I've worked with customers. Are you currently working? Yes, at Waterworks Supply. I've been there a little over a year. Do you have a current CDL, Class A? Yes, I have my CDL. I've had my CDLs ever since they came out with CDLs, which is about 10 years now. Before that, I had a chauffeur license. Do you know your way around the Louisville area? Yes, very much so. Would you be available for overtime work or weekends? Yes. Do you have any special schooling or training that you want to tell me? Yes, I have my OSHA certification on forklifts. What are your major responsibilities in your current job? When they need me to drive, I drive. When customers come in, I pick their products. I also do taps when needed for new offices or lines. What do you like best in those responsibilities? I enjoy working with the customers and driving. What do you like least? Cold and hot weather. Why do you want to leave your present job? They've had major cutbacks about 6 months ago, and they are about to go through it again, and I believe they are going to cut way back this time. Can you describe for me the best supervisor you've ever had? He was hands-on and worked with you, and if you did not know something, he worked with you to show you how and why to do it. What about the worst supervisor? He was just not a people person. Will tell you one thing. He'll tell you to do something in a strong voice, and he doesn't ask. He just tells you in sort of in a yelling type voice. What do you feel is your strongest asset? What do you feel is your strongest asset? My dependability, being on time every day and doing my job correctly. What would you like to improve? Better knowledge of my job where I could possibly move up. I would like a better knowledge of my job so I could possibly move up. How would your last supervisor describe you as an employee? I believe he did give me I believe he would give me a good recommendation as far as the job knowledge, performance, and doing what I'm supposed to be doing. What did you do in your last job to contribute towards teamwork? I would always pitch in and help. We'd always pitch in and help each other. We'd help each other load the trucks whenever they needed a hand. Can you give me an example of a time when you had to go above and beyond the call of duty in order to get the job done? Paula, you're going to need to turn the tape over. I don't have room to finish. Okay. Continuation on Michael Knight. Can you give me an example of a time when you had to go above and beyond the call of duty in order to get the job done? There were times when I was delivering carpet and they would order really a large amount of carpet, a really large carpet piece, and they did not send you with a tow motor or anything for unloading that carpet, and you'd have to try to get it off, and sometimes you might be by yourself and you'd have to try to get it off, and so you would just figure out how to do that. You would like tie a rope around it and sometimes tie it to a tree to get it off. Can you tell me about some major obstacles you had to overcome in your last job and how did you handle it? One time I was driving and it was very late at night and my truck broke down and I could not get it, and the brakes on the truck broke down and I could not get it fixed. Well, I could not, let me rephrase this, I'm rambling, Paula, and I could not get a hold of anyone about it. So I just went on and got a mechanic, got the truck fixed, got everything taken care of. I paid for it myself and just got on with the delivery, or got the truck back to the company with, on my own. Of course, I was reimbursed for it, but I took care of everything. What kind of things bother you when the person won't give you a chance? Paula, I did go on and set up an interview for this gentleman with Bob Butcher on Tuesday, September 10th at 2:30 p.m. As soon as I get the results of that, I'll add that to these notes. Thanks, Paula. Okay, Paula, this is the next one. Notes from interview with John Knuckles, that's Knuckles, on Tuesday, September 10th at 10 a.m. Can you describe for me your past work experience? I have 9 years at Lowe's driving and doing commercial inside sales. Prior to that, I was at B&M Trucking. They went out of business, but I drove a semi over the road. And then before that, I was at Jewish Hospital for 5 years. I was a food service worker, and I did that right out of high school. Are you currently working? No. Do you have a current Class A CDL? Yes, I do. I've had it for about 10 years. I got it because it would be better pay. I didn't want to be a dishwasher all of my life, or do truck, and actually I don't want to do truck driving all my life for that matter. Do you know your way around the Louisville area? Yes. Would you be available for overtime work or weekends? Yes. And do you have any schooling or special schooling or training? No. And what did you do in your what were your major responsibilities in your last job? I would deliver to customers their orders. Customer service is not the number one thing. Did loading and unloading the trucks, and that's about it. What did you like best in your responsibilities? The customer service. What did you like least? Really do not know. Really liked my job there. Why did you leave your last job? Lowe's was becoming more retail than when I started. I used to deliver building supplies, and now they're moving more into washers and dryers, and I want to deliver lumber and building supplies. Also, there's some management changes going through, and some people aren't getting along with them. Not that I was one of them, but I decided to move on and take my chances. Describe for me the best supervisor you've ever had. He instilled trust in his workers. He did not have He instilled trust in his workers. Therefore, you didn't have an immediate supervisor, standing over your feet. He trusted his employees. What about the worst supervisor? Lies to you or tells you one thing and then does something totally opposite. What do you feel is your strongest asset? The ability to work with minimum supervision or hands-on with the supervisor. What would you like to improve? My basic overall skills. Everyone tries to learn as much as they can at whatever their job duties are. How would your last supervisor describe you as an employee? On time, seldom called in, could take change when needed, go the extra mile, and go the extra mile. What did you do in your last job to contribute towards teamwork? Worked as a team in the commercial sales department at Lowe's. You had to work as a unit. Can you give me an example of a time when you had to go above and beyond the call of duty in order to get the job done? Can't say. A lot of times we had to take things... hold on. I'm sorry. Sometimes we had to take a lot of things on ourselves, whether it was either staying late or coming in early. Can you tell me about a major obstacle you had to overcome in your job, and how did you handle it? The store manager himself, that was an obstacle. Just trying to work with him the best you can. If I had problems, I would go to my immediate supervisor, and the two of us would resolve it. What kind of things bother you the most? Not a whole lot. It takes a lot to make me mad. I tell you what does, though. If you're working with other employees and they're not doing their job and you have to take up their slack. Paula, after I interviewed this gentleman, I decided not to send him on over to Bob for an interview. I'm really not interested in this person any further. Thank you. Okay, Paula, here's the next one. This is the notes from interview with Anthony Barnes on Tuesday, September 10th at 1 p.m. with Denise Sanford. First question, can you describe your past work experience? I worked at Sissel for 5.5 years. I was laid off. Then I was a spot welder, welded industrial baskets. I came to work on time. I thought I had a future. I was a good worker. Then at Rebco, that's REBCO, I was the relief forklift driver. Let's see. I was relieving him a lot. Then before that, Louisville Ladder. I wasn't there for very long, only 4 or 5 months. It was my first job out of high school. Then my first job out of high school was with Andy Frain. That's F-R-A-I-N. I was a security guard for the fairgrounds and the executive inn, and I worked at Homerama a lot. And that's it. Are you currently working? No. I was laid off about 4 weeks ago. Do you have a CDL license? No. Would you be available for overtime work or weekends? Yes. Do you have any special schooling or any training? No. What did you do in your last job? Let me rephrase that. What were your major responsibilities in your last job? To get parts out on time and make quality parts when I made them. I made most of the big industrial baskets. My average was 3 to 4, but I tried to get out 4 or 5. Would you like best in those responsibilities? My supervisor gave me a job to do, and he went on, and I would then train the new people. I liked that he trusted me and knew I could do the job, and not be looking over my shoulder every 5 minutes. What did you like least? I thought I had a future, and then I got laid off. But they done me right while I was there. Why did you leave your last job? They had cutbacks and did away with the branch of dryers, and did away with a bunch of dryers, and they did away with the bunch of us that worked on them. If I was still there, I wouldn't be looking to leave. Describe for me the best supervisor you've had. If you made a mistake, he would come up and explain it. He never came up and cussed at you or yelled at you. If my supervisor treats me right, I'm willing to talk to him. Liked him real well. What about the worst supervisor? If you did something wrong, first thing he would do would be was cuss you out. He would wait till you were with a bunch of people, and then he would try to embarrass you. Okay. Next question. What do you feel is your strongest asset? They expect me to be there on time, and I'm there. If they give me a job, they are doing me a favor, and I will be there and on time, and I will do a safe job. Okay, next. What would you like to improve? I really do not know on that.
would like to improve my education. How would your last supervisor describe you as an employee? I think he would describe me as a good employee. I was always there on time, didn't cause trouble. What did you do in your last job to contribute towards teamwork? If one of the employees was gone, we would all chip in and help. And I was always willing to learn everything I could so that I could, advance myself and, help with other jobs. Can you give me an example of a time when you had to go above and beyond the call of duty in order to get the job done? If you were working on this one order that had to be ready to go out at a certain time, I would work overtime if they needed me to get the dryers out. Hold on. But sometimes there were always these last-minute things, and I would work the time needed to get the stuff out. Can you tell me about some major obstacles you have had to overcome in your job, and how did you handle it? Well, I can't read that well or spell, and so if somebody gives something to me to do, I need them, have to have it explained to me and where the parts are and what the parts are. And if I'm not understanding, I will always go to somebody and ask them for help so that I don't do something wrong. I just want to make sure that I know where the parts are and what parts are going in it so that I don't mess it up or do it wrong. But I do have trouble reading and spelling, but I did graduate. What kind of things bother you the most? I can't figure out some words. I have a problem with reading. That really bothers me. Paula, that's the end of that interview. I'm not going to send him over to Bob for an interview. I did like this gentleman, and most of the time, I did, the interview was going well. But this problem he has with reading, they have measurements over there. He needs to be able to read measurements. He needs to be able to read to fill orders and to pull parts. And Steve is not going to have time to, hold his hand as far as being able to tell him which ones to get and which ones not to get. He needs to be able to figure that out on his own. And so I'm not considering this gentleman any further. Thank you. Paula, I need you to go back to Michael Knight's notes and add this from his interview with Bob Wucher on Tuesday, September 10th at 2:30. Bob did interview Mr. Knight, and he said that Mr. Knight has a lot of interest in the job. However, Bob said he couldn't swear. He said in showing the gentleman around, he said it's possible it was his cologne, but he doesn't really think so. But it smelled like this gentleman had some drinks at lunch. He wasn't slurring or stumbling, but he really does think that he'd had some drinks at lunch. Also, after the gentleman, Mr. Knight, left, he did ask Carolyn if she had smelled the guy's breath, and she also believes it was that he had been drinking at lunch. I don't need anybody. Granted, he's not an employee yet, but you would think if you were going on an interview, you wouldn't be drinking before the interview. And I can't afford to take a chance and get somebody in who's going to be a problem. Bob did say that as far as experience, and that this gentleman's experience does closer to the experience at Steele than anyone else except for Trina, but we're not going to take a chance with this gentleman. Did I say that right? Anyway, his experience does closely resemble that at working at the Steele warehouse, but we're not going to hire anybody who might have a problem. Thank you, Paula. Okay, Paula, here's another one. Notes from interview with Mike Walls, W-A-L-L-S, on Tuesday, September 10th at 2 p.m. First question, can you describe your past work experience? I've been in the truck industry quite a while. I've done over-the-road truck driving for approximately 10 to 12 years. In the industry, the last couple of years I've been in business as owner and operator. As of the 1st of August, I got out of the business altogether. Are you currently working? No. So he had a business and he quit. I'm not don't type this. I'm just making comments. It's been a long day, and I'm getting giddy here. Do you have a current Class A CDL? Yes, I have a CDL. I've had it since 1992, and I've used it the whole time. Do you know your way around the Louisville area? Yes. Would you be available for overtime work or weekends? Sure. What schools have you attended? Rephrase this question. Do you have any special training or classes, schooling that you would want to mention? In maintenance of air conditioning and heating, a little sales, and I used to sell cars in the 80s, and I'm a carpenter. What were your major responsibilities in your last job? To provide Ford Kentucky trucking and assembly with Ford parts from distributors in the Midwest. What did you like best in those responsibilities? The relationship between my subcontractors and Ford Motor. It made me a good living. What did you like least? Did not appreciate in that industry the 17 to 18 hours a day and only getting 1.5 days off a week with my family. It paid good money, but I am not getting any younger, and I need to spend more time at home. Why do you want to leave your present job? To spend more time at home. Describe for me the best supervisor you've had. He knew that industry that I was in, and he knew what he was talking about, and I knew he knew it, and we became pretty good friends. What about the worst supervisor? Hold on. It looks like I forgot to ask him about the worst supervisor, so you can just put in there, forgot to ask. What do you feel is your strongest asset? Over the last decade, the hours invested in my job, wish it was on equal playing field with my family. What would you like to improve? To always advance and go as far as I can. I want to be the CEO. I like to be in charge. How would your last supervisor describe you as an employee? A real go-getter. What did you do in your last job to contribute towards teamwork? Listen to my employees' problems and whatever it takes to keep them with me, and I would do it. Can you give me an example of a time when you had to go above and beyond the call of duty in order to get the job done? I would go pick my employees up at his home and give him a ride to the shop when he needed it, and I would lend him money. Can you tell me about some major obstacles you had to overcome in your job, and how did you handle it? Hold on. It's there, but you have to stay focused on your job, and no matter how big it is, you have to overcome it, and you have to be strong. So basically, he just said, didn't matter what obstacle, you just had to overcome it and be strong and stay focused. What kind of things bother you the most? Nothing. Nothing bothers me. It used to, but not anymore. I just stay focused. Hold on. Oh. Okay, I found it. I thought I didn't write it. On the worst supervisor, go back up and add that in. What about the worst supervisor? It was underneath this and I didn't see it. He doesn't recall any. I try to get along with everybody to get the job done. They do not, they wouldn't be in that position if they weren't capable, and I just try working with them. That's the end of this guy. I'm not sending him over to meet with Bob, so that ends it. Thanks a lot, Paula. Paula, this is the last one for today. I'm getting real tired of them, so I know you are. Notes from interview with Diana, Diana Pruneski, that's Pruneski, on Tuesday, September 10th at 3:30 p.m. First question, can you describe your past work experience? I was a supervisor in an upholstery factory for over 3 departments. Had between 35 and 40 employees at any time. I have a lot of factory experience, forklift loading and unloading, cranes, hoist, all types of forklifts. At 2 places I've worked, I did local deliveries. I don't have my CDL, but did get my physical to get one, and I could go take the test and get it. Are you currently working? Yes, at MKM. Also own my own business of dog grooming at home. By the way, she's been at MKM for 16 months. Do you have a current CDL Class A? No, but could get it. I've already trained. All I just need to do is go get the license. Do you know your way around the Louisville area? Yes. Would you be available for overtime work or weekends? Yes. Do you have any special schooling or training? Not in this job, but I did do 2 years of college at, hold on, 2 years of college at Prosser, I believe she said. Anyway, it's in cosmetology, so like she said, also she's pretty well at getting along at any job and succeeding. She's dependable, likes to know what her job is, she wants to do better work, and hold on. She said she does better by working by herself and getting more done that way, but don't hold that against her because she can also work well with people. It's just that when she gets something and can go on and do it by herself, she just gets more done. That was the end of schooling. Tell me about your major responsibilities in your last job. Get the shipments ready, pull the orders, package, band, and wrap, and weigh, then load and unload all the trucks. Also, she goes throughout the plant and picks up stock and gets it ready for shipment. What do you like best in your responsibilities? All of it. I do it all by myself and kind of like being in charge. I answer to my bosses, but they give me the paperwork in the morning, and I do my job and go through and do it, and at the end of the day, I turn it back. At the end of my shift, I turn it back into them. So she likes working like that. You might make a note that that's a lot how it would operate over at the Still warehouse. They get their tickets, they go and take care of it. So what do you like least? Lack of work. Why do you want to leave your present job? It is there is a possibility of layoff. Also, it's slow. They're giving us days off without pay, and we can't draw on employment. And there's also a possibility of a strike in October. Describe for me the best supervisor you've ever had. He trained me well, would give you the detail, expectations, would listen to you, and we got along well. What about the worst supervisor? He did not know what was going on, no clue about the production or shipping, never would get them involved. They never got themselves involved. They just wanted to make sure the job was done, but they didn't know how it was done. They were unorganized. What do you feel is your strongest asset? I'm a very hard worker, learn quickly. Where would you like to improve? My position, I'd like to be back in supervision, or at least in charge of something. How would your last supervisor describe you as an employee? Hardworking, dependable, got things done, you did not need to oversee her. What did you do in your last job to contribute towards teamwork? Everything. If working on something and could help somebody else to get what they were doing done faster and easier, I'd go over and show them what they could do to make it easier or faster so that they get the job done and get on with something else. I'm very well liked. People come to me if they need things, and I know how to take a joke. Can you give me an example of a time you had to go above and beyond the call of duty in order to get the job done? Yes. One night I got off of work at 11:30, and I received a phone call at about 5:30 in the morning, and I had only been in bed for about an hour and a half. And they needed me to come in because there was a hot order that needed to get delivered down to E-Town and Bowling Green. So I went in and took the order, and when I got back, I went on to work, and I worked until 11:30 that night. Can you tell me about some major obstacles you had to overcome in your last job, and how did you handle it? Before the job where I was a supervisor, they'd made me a foreman, and one of the ladies resented it because she thought she deserved the job. So I finally set her down and told her that if she turned herself around and straightened out and would start working, that eventually one of these days I could help her reach the goal that she wanted to be as a foreman and move her on up. But she'd have to turn herself around, and so I just set her down, and it wasn't easy, but she did eventually get herself straightened out. What kind of things bother you? People that don't want to work, or even they tell you they want to work, but they don't really. Slackers. That's the end of the interview with Diane Perniski. I did send her over to meet with Bob Butcher on Tuesday, September 10th at about 4:15. And that's the end of that. Thanks, Paula. This should be the end of it, at least for today. Thanks. Bye.